We're hitting them where it hurts.
The fight against sex trafficking and the plan to give prosecutors more tools to take down pimps and solicitors.
The developer is ready to pour more than $1 billion into this development, and what he really wants to see is a truly working waterfront.
Dreaming up a major makeover along the San Diego waterfront. The developer and fishermen who are invested in what happens with this prime waterfront real estate.
I've put in for annual leave ahead of time for when the survey windows are, and this is my vacation.
And it's a job and an adventure. Meet the men and women behind the snow survey team in the Sierra. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. There's new legal action tonight over President Trump's travel bans. The ACLU of San Diego and Imperial counties is suing for documents on how they were implemented. The travel bans targeted passengers from Muslim-majority countries. KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero has more.
The Freedom of Information Act lawsuit is one of 13 filed by ACLU affiliates across the U.S. It seeks records related to how Trump's executive orders were enforced on the ground. The ACLU had filed Freedom of Information Act requests in early February for those documents, things like emails and memos tied to implementation of the travel bans. But the government has not responded in the required timeframe. That's why now the ACLU is suing. I spoke with Mitra Abdullahi of the ACLU earlier today. She says the ACLU wants those records to find out if the travel bans were being enforced lawfully, because there was a lot of confusion at the time.
We had heard reports that, for instance, after federal judges had told the government to stop putting people back on airplanes and denying them entry into the United States, that CBP officers were nonetheless doing that. We had heard reports that CBP officers were refusing to let attorneys speak with individuals who were being detained and who were seeking assistance of counsel.
She says there was also confusion regarding whether people with green cards were included in the ban. Abdullahi added that CBP has a long history of ignoring Freedom of Information Act requests. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
A number of public school districts in California have declared themselves safe havens or sanctuaries in response to tough immigration policies of the Trump administration. And the state superintendent hoped that number continues to rise. The State Office of Public Instruction says so far 40 districts representing more than 2 million children have adopted sanctuary policies that don't allow ICE officials on campus without written consent. State Superintendent Tom Turlickson says he doesn't want parents avoiding schools because they fear aggressive immigration enforcement.
It's key to student success. Parents should feel free to come onto campuses and be aides in the classroom, help with field trips, help with activities on school, and they shouldn't fear deportation when they're going to school to help their kids.
ICE says it doesn't target public schools as part of its enforcement efforts, but the State Office of Education says there have been a handful of arrests on campuses. The legal battle over San Diego's pension reform measure of 2012 may not be over. An appeals court yesterday upheld Proposition B, which eliminated guaranteed pensions for almost all new city employees. Today, the city's largest union decided to appeal that decision to the California Supreme Court. The state's highest court could decide to decline to review the case, which would mean Prop B is here to stay. If it takes the case on, the issue may not be resolved for several years. A state lawmaker from San Diego wants to give prosecutors more tools to fight sex trafficking. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has the story.
The legislation is taking aim at the money generated by sex trafficking. Assemblymember Brian Mainshine is asking fellow lawmakers to give expanded powers to state and local governments. He wants to enhance their ability to sue people paying for sex and to sue the pimps who are making it possible. Assembly Bill 1495 is designed to focus attention on those creating the crime, not the victims of sex traffickers.
We're hitting them where it hurts. We want to put them out of business financially. Sadly, some of them look at the criminal penalties sort of as a cost of doing business.
Mainshine says sex trafficking is an $800 million a year business in San Diego County alone. This bill gives prosecutors the same tools they can use to fight commercial fraud. Tiffany Mester was a victim of a sex trafficker. She's pleased that money generated through the measure will help women like herself.
So all the money that we can get from the pimps and from the Johns will go directly to help rehabilitate these women.
The bill is being discussed next week in the Assembly Judiciary Committee. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
A recent report says the San Diego Fire Department isn't meeting its own response time goals, and the only way to fix that is to build more fire stations. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says that will be a costly endeavor.
$1 million. That's how much the city's independent budget analyst estimates it will cost to build the 7 unfunded fire stations outlined in a report last month. Staffing those stations would cost about $18.7 million per year. Chris Olson of the IBA's office says that's money the city simply doesn't have.
The city doesn't have enough money to build new stations, and stations aren't the only need that we have. The states, not only do we not have enough money to build new stations, we don't have enough capital to do a lot of the other priorities that the city has.
Those priorities include libraries, parks, and road repairs. The IBA's office has presented a cheaper alternative: have extra fire engines roam the city with no brick and mortar station. But it cautions that plan is not a long-term solution. This analysis comes as the mayor and city council are preparing to cut tens of millions of dollars from the city's budget to offset rising pension costs. The budget for the next fiscal year will be unveiled later this week. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
San Diego computer scientists are helping Google crack down on scammers who use fake addresses to get their businesses listed on Google Maps. KPBS tech reporter David Wagner has the story.
When you're locked out of your car, Google Maps might seem like a great way to find a locksmith near you. But the closest listing might be fake. The address could be nothing more than a P.O. box, and what seems like a local phone number could lead you to a remote call center. Based on some reports, you may end up dealing with a shady subcontractor who will charge you much more than what you thought you'd be paying. Google recently teamed up with Danny Huang and other UC San Diego computer scientists to get more data on abuse of Google Maps.
Scammers were planting fake pins around the map, in this case locksmith, to create a false sense of proximity.
The researchers found that listings for locksmiths, plumbers, and other on-call contractors were the most common type of scam. Google says improvements to its business verification process have reduced the number of fake listings by 70% since 2015. Huang has noticed that scammers are disappearing from search results in San Diego, but after working on this project, he says he'll be pretty careful the next time he has to contact a locksmith. David Wagner, KPBS News.
The civil war in Syria stayed at the top of the White House agenda today. President Trump met with NATO's Secretary General. He praised NATO member states for condemning the chemical attack that prompted a U.S. military strike.
It is time to end this brutal civil war, defeat terrorists, and allow refugees to return home. In facing our common challenges, we must also ensure that NATO members meet their financial obligations and pay what they owe. Many have not been doing that.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is in Moscow now. He met with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The meeting comes as expectations of an easy rapport between the Trump administration and Russia are crashing into reality.
We frankly discussed the current state of U.S.-Russia relations. I expressed the view that the current state of U.S.-Russia relations is at a low point. There is a low level of trust between our two countries. The world's two foremost nuclear powers cannot have this kind of relationship.
We'll have more on the developments in Washington and analysis on the U.S. and Russia relationship on PBS Newshour. That's tonight at 7, right here on KPBS. A bill in California legislature would move the dates of the state's presidential primary election after last year's vote came with the Republican and Democratic nominees already essentially decided. The measure would shift the state primary from June to the third Tuesday in March. If other states attempt to move past California, the governor could move up the date even further, so it remains behind only Iowa and New Hampshire. The legislation is scheduled for a hearing next week. Qualcomm will pay nearly $815 million to settle a dispute over royalty payments with Blackberry. The dispute was focused on royalties applied to prepayments made by Blackberry for smartphones sold from 2010 to 2015. Blackberry claimed it overpaid royalties to Qualcomm. The San Diego-based company disagreed. A hearing scheduled for next month will determine the final amount. A new report finds having cancer not only affects a person's health, but also their bank account. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says having insurance is no guarantee against financial pain.
The report comes from the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. It finds even people with health insurance face stiff out-of-pocket costs. These can include deductibles, co-pays, and out-of-network care. Senior policy analyst Jennifer Singletary wrote the report. She says cancer patients often face what's called financial toxicity.
So if you're having financial problems paying for your treatments and staying afloat, that does actually affect your outcomes, and it's harder to recover or to, kind of survive your very grueling treatments.
The report reveals in 2014, Americans paid $4 billion in out-of-pocket costs for cancer treatments. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
The Department of Veterans Affairs launched a new website. It's not finished, but you can find data on the 1,700 VA health facilities, like wait times and satisfaction ratings. Veteran officials say this will provide more transparency. This comes amid speculation about their quality of care. VA leaders say the new site should reduce those concerns. State libraries fear a big chunk of their funding is on the cutting block. President Trump's budget plan would cut some of their grant money. Members of state libraries voiced their concerns at the state capitol in the rain. They argued this would limit their resources.
We're trying to get the word out, that libraries are important to everyone. And the funding, will still be around, but we might not be able to do as much to help the smaller libraries.
This public opposition comes during Library Week. Mayor Kevin Faulconer is set to release his proposed budget tomorrow. City officials are grappling with a $47 million shortfall. They say it's due to an increase in the mandatory contribution to the city employee retirement fund. The amount was increased because retirees are living longer. The new spending plan will be presented at the city council meeting next week. $1 billion seaport development of downtown's Central Embarcadero could revitalize what was once San Diego's defining trait, a thriving commercial fishing industry. The stakes are huge, not just for the fishermen, but for the seaport's developer who sees the project as his legacy. I spoke with iNews Source reporter Brad Racino, who has been following this story from the beginning. So, Brad, we're here at Tuna Harbor, just outside of Seaport Village. What's the vision for Seaport?
It's a pretty grand vision. They're looking to redo about 70 acres of land and water, all the way from the Midway right behind me down to the Manchester Hyatt Hotel. And there's going to be a lot of stuff. The main thing is that we're concentrated on is Tuna Harbor, but there's also going to be hotels, an aquarium, an education center, a giant spire to go up in the sky, underground parking, a boutique hostel or hotel. A lot of things are going in here.
So with San Diego being a waterfront city, you would think commercial fishing is booming here, but you say it's not. Why is that?
Well, it's not just San Diego, it's actually everywhere around the country. The commercial fishing industry has kind of taken a hit over the last few decades. There's a lot of reasons why. There's mainly regulatory issues, federal, state, and local, about how these guys can fish, what they can fish, what kind of gear they need to use, and there's a lot of foreign competition. So right now, America actually imports 90% of its seafood. So most of what you eat is not from here. So right now, they're surviving, they're doing okay, but could be, according to the fishermen, a lot better and a much bigger presence in San Diego.
So speaking of the fishermen, you've been in some of these closed-door meetings with the fishermen and developer. What's being discussed and whose input is being considered?
Well, yeah, I've been at these meetings for the last 6 months. They've been going on for, I think, about a year or actually more. And what the developer is doing is trying to get input from them about what they would like to see this harbor look like. The developer is ready to pour more than $1 billion into this development, and what he really wants to see is a truly working waterfront. It's a draw for him and for the tourists that come here, but what the fishermen are trying to do is kind of leverage that opportunity and say, okay, you know, you're going to have this big development, we're a part of it, we want to say. And so they've been going back and forth, and to be part of these meetings has been pretty interesting because as they started out, the fishermen are very skeptical. They did not trust this developer, but over the months, they've really, I think, started to come together, work together, and trust each other just a little bit more.
So, Brad, we're here on the docks, and part of this development plan is to turn the harbor into a functioning harbor for the commercial fishing industry. What would that look like?
What that looks like is pretty much an all-in-one spot. So a fisherman yesterday described it really well to me as think of a Home Depot or a Costco where you can get everything you need in one place. So they don't just need docks or space, they also need supporting industries, whether that's fuel service or someone to drop off ice or processors coming in and out, offloaders, things like that to actually make this a spot where it's all in one shop.
So Brad, what about people who like San Diego's waterfront just the way it is and who may be uneasy about any major changes? Will their considerations be taken into account?
Yeah, and they kind of already have been. For the last year or year and a half, the port has been talking to people. There have been a lot of stakeholders that have come out to the port meetings and a lot of public input that has helped shape this process. There are a lot of people that don't want to see this change at all, but then again, there are a lot of people that do. So what I would urge anyone, whatever way they feel about this project, is just to actually show up and have your voice heard. There's a meeting every single month at the port, the Board of Supervisors meeting. It's all online, the agenda's there, so I'd urge people to take part in it.
And why should people care about what happens at the port?
Well, the port is actually in charge of all of this land. I mean, there's miles and miles of waterfront here and public land, but it actually is all the public's land. We technically own this land, the port just manages it. So anything that happens along the waterfront, you should treat as if it were your backyard. So whether it's Tuna Harbor or hotels going up here, people should know that they have a say in this, and this is their land and their city.
So what's next? When might we see some changes?
Well, the next step is next month where the developer, the fishermen, and a bunch of other people are going to present the plans that they've been working on to the Port Board of Supervisors with the hope of having it baked into what's called the Port Master Plan Update, which is this lengthy process that the port's been going through to update their master plan, which kind of lays out development all across the board down to the nitty-gritty of every single parcel. So once that happens, then they have an environmental impact report to go through, then probably a whole bunch of lawsuits. So this is going to be many years down the line.
Brad Racino, iNews Source reporter, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, clouds are rolling into San Diego tonight. Janae Shocker has the forecast.
Well, as we take a look at our satellite and radar, a whole bunch of nothing across Southern California. Up in the northern regions, though, we are seeing some rain as well as some mountain snow in towards the Sierras as a new area of low pressure cold front begins to sweep through the region here. So, but as far as Southern California is concerned, we are looking at just some clouds for tonight here in the metro area of San Diego. 60 degrees for our low. Now, moving across the county out towards the mountains, well, we're warming up. 47 degrees into Ramona, 48 into Alpine, 43 into Mount Laguna. Out in Borrego Springs, we're at 57 degrees for tonight's low, and we'll see some clouds really across much of the county. Now, for our Thursday, that area of low pressure cold front continues to sweep onshore. We are going to continue to see that dip down just north of Los Angeles. However, Los Angeles all the way down into San Diego, we're not looking at any of that wet weather. However, winds out towards the deserts will be picking up. Now, heading towards the weekend, ridge of high pressure, pretty long one as well. We're going to be seeing some dry weather continues and warming temperatures. Let's see how this plays out across each of our regions here. For the coast, 68 with those clouds breaking for sunshine as well throughout the afternoon. That's pretty much going to be the story as we head into our Fridays. So cloudy mornings, pretty normal here, and then breaking for some sunshine. We'll start to warm up as we hit our Saturday. That front ends up passing, so our winds are going to shift around just a bit. So we'll be seeing some more sunshine earlier on in the day, and then into our Sunday, well, we're staying in those 70s for our highs. Very comfortable, good beach weather for the weekend. 49 for our low on Sunday near the coast. So if you are going to head out to the boardwalk, well, you are going to need a light sweater for that. Into our Thursday inland, well, we're looking at some clouds breaking once again. Temperatures here running a bit warmer. In fact, as we head towards the weekend, not only are we in the 70s, but we're actually nearing 80 degrees as we hit our Sunday. So very warm day or days ahead for the weekend. We'll stay in the mid to upper 70s as we head to our Monday as well. A little bit more clouds early next week. Into the mountains we go. Good news. Overnight lows going to climb into the 40s after our Thursday. So, hey, that's a little bit more comfortable. We're in those mid to upper 50s Thursday and Friday. Into the weekend, hey, temperature is not too bad here. We're in those mid 60s, cooling off or just a touch cooler into our Monday at 63 degrees for your high. And last but not least, well, the deserts, it certainly is warm. We're in those lower 80s as we head through our Friday. Mostly sunny skies, but then the weekend rolls around and we're back in those 90s and staying into the upper 80s as we hit Monday. For KPBS News, I'm Shanae Shocker.
California farmers are getting good news from Central Valley water managers. They'll be receiving 100% of their water allotment this year after enduring years of severe cuts to their supply. The Farm Bureau says it's unfortunate the announcement comes too late for farmers to capitalize on all the crops they could have planted.
There will still be land that's left fallow because they didn't have the word early enough, but they'll be able to use this surface water from the streams and reservoirs instead of pumping groundwater for those crops. That in turn will help the groundwater recover, and that's all to the good.
The Farm Bureau says it's still looking for the state legislature to fund water storage projects, so they'll be prepared for the next drought. California broke a statewide energy record last month when, for a brief period, consumers were relying on nearly 60% renewable energy for their power needs. Energy operators say it's a small step towards meeting the state's goal of getting to 50% of renewable energy sources like solar and winds by 2030. Last year, solar only made up 13% of the state's energy use. But federal energy managers say businesses and utilities are adopting solar technology on pace with the state's renewable energy targets.
It also helps with price because, well, sun is free, wind is free, water is free. All we have to do is build the facilities in order to use it. Natural gas, while it is a cheaper fuel, you still have to pay for natural gas. So it also shows that we're putting more cost-effective energy on the grid.
Federal energy experts say California is still years away from fully adopting solar technology. Periodically, we update you on the levels of snowpack in the Sierra Nevada because the water contained in that snow accounts for about a third of the state's water. Today, we take a behind-the-scenes peek at what goes into getting those readings.
2 years ago, this snow survey team hiked in running shoes up to this very spot in California's Sierra Nevada. This year, they're on skis.
It's been amazing. Unprecedented.
The team found deep snow containing nearly double the water content of an average year. Near-record snowfall like this is why Governor Jerry Brown declared an end to the drought emergency. Despite newer technologies, including satellites and airplane-mounted lasers, trekking on skis to measure snow at regular intervals is still one of the most accurate ways to determine how much runoff will flow from the mountains.
We've been measuring more in the close to 50%, so the snow is half water.
Surveyors have been measuring snowpack this way for more than a century. It's a connection felt by the crew at night when they rest in historic cabins.
The logbooks go way back, and it's always interesting to get into a cabin, you pull out the old logbook and read about what they were measuring back in the 60s and earlier.
To get to the high country for the last reading of the season, the crew battled high winds and snow one day. followed by sunny blue skies the next.
Okay.
It's both a job and an adventure.
I put in for annual leave ahead of time for when the survey windows are, and this is my vacation.
Their work helps forecasters determine how much water will be available to cities, farms, and for hydroelectricity. And during high snow years, helps dam operators know how much water to store and how much to let go to prevent flooding.
Right now, they still need us to do ground truthing for the depth, but also to measure the density.
Ensuring crews continue this tradition to confirm and verify readings taken with new technology. Brian Melly in California's High Sierra Nevada, Associated Press.
Here's a look at what we are working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, biomedical devices, craft beer, and drones. Just some of the key products that keep North County's economy ticking. We'll look at what's behind those job opportunities in the region. And on Midday Edition, California leaders have vowed to continue their pursuit of clean energy air and climate progress. The one group who's challenging the state's Environmental Protection Agency. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.